This chapter is about the dense point cloud. Our objectives is to really understand the definition of point cloud classification, comprehend the function of the point groups, perform an automated classification, and become familiar with manual classification techniques. And the most important is learn how to export unique point groups. One of the deliverables derived from Pix4D Mapper is the dense point cloud, or DPCs. The DPC is generated by the same means of dense image mapping discussed in the previous chapter. The result is a densified 3D collection of points that can be opened in a number of third-party software applications for further analysis. The DPC is processed during step 2. Now, it's imperative that step 1 is processed before generating the DPC. It's also important that if GCPs are implemented, they must be tied to the images before processing step 2. The DPC may be segmented or classified into point groups. Now, each group can or will be represented a distinct feature. For an example, you may have a group labeled buildings, meaning that all the points that are buildings in the DPC are meant to represent buildings in reality. Now, there are two approaches to the classification method, automated and manual classification, and we'll discover both methods in this chapter. Now, as in previous chapters, we're going to work with a pre-processed project. The project data and the images are located in the L4 data zip file. So I'm assuming that you will have it from your instructor, and what you want to do is copy it, put it on your desktop, open it up so that we can extract it, and then take the L4 data file and move it over to your main folder, which is your last name underscore Pix4D on your desktop, and copy it over there. It won't take too long, and then once it's complete, what we're going to do is open up the file, confirm that you see the L4 data, not the previous chapters, but just the L4 data, and open that one up, take a look at projects, and then you'll see there is a folder named dcp.pix4d file. Now, all the images that you'll need is going to be in your project file or your L4 data file, and this is where all the images that we're going to need for it. So let's go back to the project folder under the L4 data, and then double click the Pix4D file, the DPC Pix4D file, and what that will do, as before, is going to bring up Pix4D Mapper. And since Pix4D Mapper does not save the relative image paths, we'll need to tell the software the location of our image. This will happen at any time that data or projects gets transferred from one computer to another. So click OK and navigate over to the image folder. Okay, highlight that and then click select the folder, and then it will begin loading. And it will display, after it loads, it will display the map view. As you can see on the left side, it's highlighted. And then notice that this project was flown in Switzerland. So let's click the Ray Cloud view, which is just underneath the map view. And you're going to see some of the automatic tie points and the camera locations. So the automatic tie points is way down below. The camera locations are these on above. And now use the navigation skills to familiar yourself with the data. So you can scroll around, take a look at it, zoom in and out. Okay, and you can see that every little highlight that this is doing is actually a tie point, an automatic tie point from all these images. So that all these images with the overlap has determined automatically specific tie points between those images, and that's what all these little dots are. So take a few moments and scroll around, just like what you've learned in the past. and get used to pivoting, turning, okay, and looking at the type points as well as the camera locations. Now, as we previously discussed, we can classify the dense point cloud. In this section, or this chapter, we're going to learn the automated classification technique. Now, notice in the layers that the check block for point clouds is unchecked. It's unlocked, okay? It's not grayed out, but so it's unlocked, but it's not checked. Now, let's check that. Now, what you're going to see, you'll see a prompt that really asks you if you really want to do that. So let's click Don't Display This Message again, and then click the OK button. It'll take just a second to display the data view, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the data view of the DPCs. Now, notice how much it really pops in your view. Instead of these little dots, it actually really pops the whole images. And notice also that the point groups over in the layers has become unlocked. Note that there are 7 predetermined groups. Now let's try checking one of these off and pay close attention to the DPC. Notice if anything does change. And the answer is no, because the automated classification is not performed as a default processing option. So technically, all of our points are really in the unclassified group, which is the top group. So everything is under the unclassified and not the other groups, because that's why you can't see anything until we classify it. Now, there's 2 ways for us to perform automated classification. If step 2 in our processing has been processed, which we have in this scenario that we're following, so let's first click the processing, which is up here in the top. The tab enables a number of different sub-steps to be processed, including in this list is the Run Point Cloud Classification sub-step. So the Run Point Cloud Classification. So let's click that. And notice that the processing of the sub-step occurs, which you see down here in the bottom. When this is complete, your DPC will be classified and the groups will be populated. And once it's done, you can actually then check off a block, and you'll notice that there's change. Like, let's click off the road surface, and you can see it goes back to just the point cloud. Buildings, same. And you notice also that to confirm that it's been done, of course, is the completion. Now, if step 2 has not been processed, now remember previously it was processed, so we're assuming it was processed in this scenario. If step 2 has not been processed, the following does apply. Now, do not follow this for this lab. Let's just discuss this. This part is meant for only for demonstration purposes in regards to the tab. So we can actually click the processing tab, which is down here in the bottom, which is processing options. Let's take a look at that. In the processing options window, click number 2. Then notice on the right where it says point cloud classification. Let's check that one, and then click the OK button to close the processing options. Now, with this parameter set, the automated classification will occur during the processing of step 1. Now, once you have performed the automated classification, we can explore how well the software classifies the DPCs. Check the boxes. If you go over here just to the under layers, just go through and just check them off and explore that a bit and evaluate how precise the software performed the automated classification. It is helpful to turn off the ATP from this view. This is done by unchecking the block called automatic, which is under the type point. So let's check that off, and it's actually improves it a bit so you can see. Another perspective for evaluating the automated classification is to display the groups by their class color. Then check the box where it says show class color. Check that box. Now I want you to evaluate the groups. Does this change your opinion about the performance of the automated classification? So play around with this of unchecking this to see what the cause and effect is. Upon review of your DPC, locate an area where you have identified misclassifications. Now, the best way to do this is to toggle the checkbox Show Class Color on and off. Now, for example, there's a building in the center of the project which is classified in multiple zones. So let's zoom in, and then we can look at this by, we see a building classified as building which is purple, but it's also classified as a human-made object. That's the color over here. Okay, so we see some of that in there. And we see some high vegetation, which is green, into that building as well. So we need to correct the erroneous human-made object and the high vegetation groups by performing manual classifications. So locate and click the Edit Densified Point Cloud button at the top of your screen, which is right up there where you can see a little pointer in the cloud. So let's click that. And this prompt, you should read it, explains the clicking sequence required to make this tool work. Now you can check the box for don't display this message again after you read it, or if you want to let it display again, that's fine. For right now, I'm going to display, don't display. Now, use your mouse to digitize a polygon around the entire house. The sequence is to start your polygon with left click of your mouse. So you can start your sequence by taking your left mouse, clicking it. And then after you complete it, then double click the right mouse button, and it will encase the building that you're looking at. Do your best to digitize the polygon only around the points that make up the building. Once the polygon is closed, notice the points turn in red, as you can see here. This tells you that the points are selected by you manually. So this will be a manual classification. To complete the manual classification, click the drop-down window under Editing. That's next to the Edit Densified Point Cloud button. Now from this drop-down, click Building, and then click Assign. And lo and behold, congratulations, you've just completed your first manual classification. To confirm these changes, click the Edit Densified Point Cloud button, and the points that were selected should now appear as purple, which they do, because they've really been classified to the buildings group. It's also helpful to check your group layers on and off to verify that the points were classified as intended. So you can go over here, check this off and on, and sure enough, it is classified. Now, if you make a mistake while performing a manual classification, simply redo your polygon and reclassify the points. And notice that the 7 predetermined groups don't account for every type of feature in the project. Cars and fences are 2 different things in reality, yet human-made objects is the only predetermined group available. The next few steps will enable you to create your own unique group to classify features like that. So let's identify some cars in your DPC. The software does a pretty good job of classifying them as human-made objects. Now let's identify some cars. So what we can do, we can expand out a little bit, and we can go over here and say, hey, here's some cars in here. So the software actually does a pretty good job of classifying them as a human-made object. But if we want to classify them as, say, cars, we first have to establish a group. So we'll go up and let's click the Edit Densified Point Cloud button again. Okay, and then what I want you to do is go over to the drop-down window, and instead of selecting one of the predetermined groups, our task is to click the New Point Group. So it actually gives you, when prompted, let's say, hey, I want to do cars, and then we hit OK. And with cars populated in the drop-down, okay, you can see that, of course, we've had a couple in there already. Any points that you select and assign will be classified within the car group. And we can put in other types of groups, and it will show up there. Complete this portion of the lab of this chapter by performing as many manual classification as you would like to. Mainly just get used to where you can reclassify and put new ones in, and you need to know the procedure on how to do that, as well as you want to confirm when you put the display properties in so you can see it. So now let's assume you are satisfied with the manual and automated classifications of your DPC. It's now time to export the DPC with either all of the groups in one file or only specific groups in one file. So within the layers, ensure that the caret for the densified point cloud is expanded. That's the little caret right there. Make sure it's expanded out. Locate the DPC group densified point cloud. Now, we also want to make sure that you unselect the edit. So we're assuming you're done with edit, because it won't let you continue on unless you finished, of course. So make sure this is unchecked or unhighlighted. And then where it says DPC Group 1 Densified Point Cloud, right-click that one. And then click Export Point Cloud. And then click Save. Now, if you say no to all of the classification work, if you say no to anything like this, none of these things will be saved. So let's save it. The next window allows you to select the groups you would like to include in a written file of the DPC. As an example, we'll uncheck everything except for buildings. So let's uncheck everything except for buildings. Also, check the LAS file, which it is. Make sure that's done to ensure that we write a LAS file. Now, you're welcome to save your LAS file in a specific folder or a specific name by clicking the Browse button. So we can click Browse. We can go over there to your desktop, okay? And then take a look at, let's just put it on the desktop, and we'll just save it there. So we're going to call it LAS. Yes, buildings. And now it's changed to the desktop, LAS buildings. We'll say OK, and the export's done. And if you notice, when it is finished, it tells you where the files were written to, so that way you can make sure that you can locate them. Notice the LAS file in the folder. So if we look over here on our desktop, it is an LAS file. You can confirm this is correct by the date of the timestamp. So about 1 minute ago it was done. The new ALS file will maintain only buildings group. The only thing that's in here is just the buildings group, and it can be shared and opened by any third-party software capable of opening point cloud. So we use the LAS file to move it from our software into a third-party software. So we'll cancel that out. Say OK. The DPC is a standalone deliverable. Millions of 3D coordinates represented the geometric characteristics of a project. Since the DPC was derived from photography, the points are maintained the colors of the image's context. So the colors that you had set up for buildings is maintained. Points may be classified either by manual or automated methods, as we did, to represent a unique feature group. So let's now click the Project tab and say Save Project As. Ensure that you are in your O2 project for the L4 data. So you're in L4 data. The O2 project is where you're at. Now let's give the project your last name again, underscore, and then say L4. And then click the save button. When you're done with that, let's go ahead and let's exit out. Let's navigate to our L4, Go to projects. Okay. And select both the last name. There it is there. And then what we'll do is, it's a Pix4D file, Davis L4, or your last name L4. You right click that, okay. Say send to, and you go down and say compress folder, and there it is. So you have a compressed zip file now with your last name L4. Now what I want you to do is take this particular file and give it to your professor, and this will complete this chapter.